Welcome back to the Get Off the Treadmill podcast for small business owners and entrepreneurs, where we show you how to build a successful business and to have a life too. We're going to dive into another topic that helps us make more money in less time and to get off the treadmill so we can experience a life of significance. And now, your host and the author of the #1 best-selling business book, Making Money is Killing Your Business, Chuck Blakeman.
Today, I'm talking with Brandon Rains. He is an estate planning attorney. He started his own firm in 2016 and has grown it to serve hundreds of clients and a team of multiple attorneys and staff. He was a member of the 3 to 5 Club, which we do around the world for about 7 years. Brandon's focus in estate planning is to help families pass on not only their family wealth, but also their family stories and values, helping make inheritances be blessings in loved ones' lives. Welcome, Brandon. It's great to have you with us.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me, Chuck.
Oh, man, my pleasure. You mentioned 3 to 5 Club in your bio, and the 3 to 5 Club is a thing. It's a mastermind group we do for business owners that you're in Colorado. You did one in Denver for a very long time. And I love it because I always needed a place to say 3 magic words. I don't know, or I am scared, or what the. And we need a place where we can actually not know everything, because we can't do that with our customers. We can't do that with our staff. They'll start putting their resume out. And we can't even do it with our spouses, because now there's 2 of us not sleeping because they actually thought we knew what we were doing.
Yeah, that's right.
So I'm a recovering John Wayne rugged individualist, and that was important to me to establish 3 to 5 Club for myself, and then it has trickled around the world, and we're excited about that. So I'm excited that you're an alumni of that, has spent a very long time to it, and you're still sending people in that direction, people who work with you and others. So it's a beautiful thing to actually be in a place where we get help and we accelerate our growth. Today, we're going to focus on hiring. And I told you before we went on air, I usually frame this one of 2 ways, and we'll probably frame both. But the common way to do it is how to hire people you'll never have to manage. Because the biggest problem with hiring, I find, with small businesses is, number one, they don't ever want to do it, because I might end up having to actually manage people, which we can disabuse you of that. You shouldn't have to. But I don't want people around, because then I have to babysit. I got enough children of my own, is what I hear. We want to help you hire people in a way that will keep you from having to ever manage them. And another effect of the way that we hire people, we have an 11-step hiring process. Our aim is to actually get people to quit before you hire them, because it's a lot harder after you hire them. So let's find out all the stuff that would make this work or not work before we ever marry. So we're going to talk about that today, and I'd love for you to just kind of kick this off and start with your macro view of hiring. Like, what was it before you ever thought of 3 to 5 Club or saw 3 to 5 Club? You probably did what everybody else did, whatever that is. So take it from here. How did you hire before you got into this process that we talk about?
Well, that's actually a great question. So I started my own firm in 2016. I joined 3 to 5 in 2017. I actually didn't hire my first person until 2020. So I had a solid 3-4 years to apply before I hired anybody. So I don't necessarily have, on the hiring process side of things, experience, but it's all about experience, right? I'm a little removed away from those heady days coming out from college. And actually, that's a little segue, is what ended up leading me to going to law school was finding out that I didn't know how to turn my master's in history into a degree. And into a career. And so That's because people are looking for experience. They want to see fully developed experiences and skill sets rather than latent talent and broadly applicable skills, which is what I had to offer. It's like, hey, I know how to write, I know how to research, analytical, critique and stuff like that. But experience was always a tough part to try to overcome, right? When you don't have any experience and people are looking for experience. And so, whereas what I learned with 3 to 5, and I had enough time to apply those principles in that 11-step hiring process, is not to go about it that way. And the long and the short of it is we've hired awesome people. I've thoroughly enjoyed working with all of them. Our hit rate is, I like to think, pretty darn good. And by the end of the process, I only had a couple people. We would start from, dozens and dozens and dozens, right, of people. And by the end, we'd only have about 1 or 2, maybe 3. And it was a coin toss to choose from them, because they were just the best of the best of the cream of the crop. And that was because of the 11-step hiring process got us there. Sometimes we said that, hey, they're essentially you're not the right fit culturally, or there's other people who are better fits. Or because it's an 11-step process, people are expecting, hey, a resume, an interview, and a job offer. That's a 3-step process, right? And so we would oftentimes people kind of self-select themselves out of the process at varying stages because it was different from what they wanted to deal with or whatever. And so it always has worked out for us really, really well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And you're exactly right. We get to where there's just a few people left, and every process does this, but I think the way we do this, people kind of select themselves out. It's like, yeah, I expected this to be much easier and much shorter. And I'm
Right.
kind of done with you. You've annoyed me enough. I'm just not going to keep going. And people drop out of the process. And you find out who wants to work before you actually do this. So one of the reasons I did this was I was failing at hiring and it wasn't going well. And so I just did something snarky or counter logical or whatever. And I wrote a really long ad. And I put everything in there about who we were as a company and who we were looking for as a human being. And then also, yeah, the skills and that kind of stuff and what our culture was. And I just wrote like a thought, it was many thousands of words. And I put it out there and we got like 15 responses to begin with. We didn't get that many responses. But then we went through this process and I just sort of made it up in the first 3 or 4 times. And as I did that, people would select themselves out because one of the principles I learned in doing this process was I want to somehow find out before I hire someone if they actually want a job or if they actually want to work. Because I don't want people who want a job. A job pays the bills, but work is meaningful. And I had to figure out, I want to find people who actually they go to work so that they can make meaning, not just make money. That was the objective of this. And so I did it for myself, and over a year or two, I perfected what worked for me, and then we put it out to other people. So I appreciate that you have looked at it. I'm just going to put this up on the screen real quickly for people who do follow us on YouTube. Quite a few follow us on YouTube. We're not going to torture this. I just want to show you, yep, we got ourselves an 11-step process here. And this is what we work through with every candidate who comes around our way. We've had really interesting responses to this in both directions. Maybe you have some stories as well, people who have found this to be the best thing they ever did, and then people who might have sent some very snarky and smart ass responses.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think for me, I think most people, if they self-select themselves out of the process, they tend to just, stop responding.
Yeah.
And so, but really so recently we actually brought on 2 new attorneys and a kind of what might be called like a director of operations, a C-suite operations and HR person. And all 3 of them, so they recently visited a 3 to 5 chapter because that's actually part of their condition of being a part of my firm is they need to be involved in some of these same conversations. And they were talking with some of the facilitators and they were like, yeah, what made me most interested was the hiring process because it's just like you. I actually looked it up. My job posting for an associate attorney is 2,537 words. If you read my posting, Chuck, be like, I know exactly where you got that from. So,
Brilliant.
deja vu. But
Yeah.
it's, starting out with a culture-based, human-focused job posting, and I've kind of distilled your hiring process down to you look first for the things that you can't train and then you look at things you can train for. And that's not an original thought. I've heard that from one of the chapters, but you look for culture fit, you look for personality fit, you look for latent, inherent in talent. And then you can build on top of that experience and develop skills. Half of my team members that I've hired didn't have prior legal experience. And I put my team up against anybody. And that's because we really love working with each other. Our values, our vision, our mission all speak to everybody that's a part of the firm. And then we just train them up. We have an incredibly robust training process, both from an onboarding and ongoing training. And that's good enough, right? If they have the talent, they'll pick up on the training, they'll learn how to do it. But if they have the experience, but they don't have the drive, they don't want to work, they don't understand the values, it's going to be like pulling teeth the entire time. And so it's, yeah, for the most part, people who, and when they've made it through the process, they understand why the process is the way that it is, why it's 11 steps, not 3. Hey, why I'm trying to make sure that it's a good fit for us. And I also frame it as I want to make sure that I'm a good fit for you too. This goes both
Yes.
ways, and you can't figure that out. I mean, from the being hired perspective, how often do people join a company and they're like, this, I've been sold a bad bag of goods, right? This
Yeah.
is not what I thought. The culture is completely different. Another attorney that I'm talking to, that's his experience, where they said, hey, we've got XYZ, we've got the systems and processes, we've got all of these things, you just have to plug and play. And within like a month or two, I was like, you guys don't have anything.
Yeah.
And that creates,
You're being sold vaporware.
yeah, right. And it feels like a bait and switch. I mean, that ruins trust, that ruins the relationship, that ruins all
Yeah.
these things when you feel like going in both directions. um, the reality is not what you thought. But if it's a multi-week, which at least for us from a timing perspective, it's 3 to 4 weeks from job posting to hiring, multi-step process, very, very rarely for us has there ever been any type of buyer's remorse, if you will. And it's by putting the time in, kind of what you said before, by putting in the time and effort in the beginning, you're able to go in there. And I always tell my new hires is like, I haven't hired you and now you have to earn my trust. I've hired you because I trust you. Now go out there and just essentially continue to show that I've made the right choice. But starting out with that trust, because you've built that trust over multiple interactions leading up to any hiring decision. It's powerful, and it starts it off at the right place, that relationship, and it just keeps it going.
That's brilliant. Well, we have limited time today, so I want to have you review how you've used some of this stuff. But I'm going to throw up real quickly the hiring principles we use, which are very different. It is kind of counter-logical. People say this stuff is counterintuitive. It's actually not. It's counter-logical. It doesn't make sense logically, but intuitively, once we get into it, you realize, yep, this really does make sense. So the 5 hiring principles. Principle number 1 is hire for culture first. Never hire for skills and experience first. Resumes are nearly useless. They're not totally useless, but they're nearly useless, and they're very harmful to get up front. Don't take direct referrals from friends, which is exactly the opposite of what we're saying. Now, we don't say don't take referrals, but don't take them from friends directly. Put them into a blind process. If they've got the right person, it actually will come out the other end. The 4th thing is you have a unique interview process for every job. If you want somebody to fix a boiler, you don't sit across the table from them and ask them, can you fix boilers? Have them fix a boiler. And then the 5th one is look for indicators of a successful hire. As you're hiring, look for people who want a job versus people who want work. So any of those you want to look at and say, yeah, that I've had particular success or particular problems with that one.
Yeah, I think maybe the first 2, probably because those are the ones that people think about most, right?
So hire for culture first and
Hire for
resumes are
culture,
nearly
resume.
useless.
Yeah, and I think, and like I said, at this point I've brought on 10 people in the last 5 years. Um, and I've always used your hiring process. But as you hear kind of other people talking about the hiring process, it's, hey, we want to make sure that you have the experience, and then we'll bring you into the interviews to see if we like you or not.
Yeah.
Right. Which it's important that you know that you're going to like them. It's kind of that culture fit. So most of the time that hiring process is inverted from, like you said, Chuck, it's counter logical. That's a new term for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, what I've seen. So for example, the job posting, right? We talk about our values, we talk about our vision, we talk about our mission. And at the very, very bottom, just to use a great example to this, is we say, don't send us your resume. Answer these 5, 6, 7, 8, however many you decide to do, culture questions. The last time that we did a job posting a couple months ago, I probably got, I didn't count, 70 to 80 resumes, just straight resumes.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Well, it's 70 to 80
Click,
people who I
delete,
know
delete.
they didn't read all the way to the end.
Yeah. So you just delete
They
without even
didn't
looking.
follow instructions. It's not a gotcha moment.
No.
But I mean, and some people may care about that more than others, but I'm in the law, words matter, the stick to it,
Details matter.
whatever. I
Yeah.
need you to read all the way to the end. If you're not reading all the way to the end of my job posting, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Right. And I just automatically know that you're not going to be a good fit. And so they answer those culture questions and then I rank them. And so it's what I've learned for me at least, it's a mix between the objective and the subjective. It's how do I express themselves? How do I feel like I'm connecting
Right.
with them and how they express themselves? But also I track their answers in a spreadsheet, scale of 1 to 10, and how do I weight these different
Mm-hmm.
components to the hiring process? And I think the last time, I mean, I'm not going to look it up, but I want to say it was a quarter of a point difference between my final two people. Like it was
Yeah.
like very much
Yeah.
coin
Throw
toss.
a dart. Right.
Yeah, and so which was hard but great at the same time.
Yes.
And so going for that culture fit, making sure that because I can't change who somebody is, right? That's not my
No.
place to even try to do that. But I can change their skill set in the sense of I can train them up on how to draft documents or to prepare a deed
Yeah.
or how to communicate and call a client and schedule a meeting. Like I can train for that. I don't need you to come into the job knowing how to do that, but I need to know that you're going to find meaning in the type of the work that we do, that it's going to energize you, that you have the ability to pick this up because we're pretty demanding with the things that we ask people to do. And it's very decentralized. I'm not looking over people's shoulders. I need to be able to trust them to be living out the things that I need them to be living out with authenticity, sincerity, and how they're interacting with their clients as they're doing these things rather than pulling teeth and always having to remind them this is how we interact with them. We're compassionate. That's one of our values. We're not jerks, in other words, right? When something has come up,
Yeah.
and so we do that. And then we can, like you said, resumes are almost pointless. I don't spend a whole lot of time looking at resumes and looking at references because that's going to be, there's a little, you can kind of fake that a little bit,
Yeah,
right?
I
Yeah.
laughingly sometimes refer to them as obituaries. It's all the stuff people used to do. And of course, you're an obituary. You never tell that the guy was actually pretty angry a lot of it. It's all the good stuff, and that's what a resume should. It's all the good stuff, but it never really tells you who the person is. And it's self-assessed. So if you look across the table and it says on their resume, you're good at PowerPoint, you ask the person, are you good at PowerPoint? They're going to say, yes, I'm good at PowerPoint. Well, how do you know? This is a
Yeah.
self-assessment. What if we actually tested you for that? So resumes have a lot of problems.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, and same thing with references, right? I don't know that I've ever come across someone who gave me a bad reference who didn't
Yeah,
have
you
a.
have to go two or three deep. That's how we do it because the first person they give you is going to be a setup. Ask them for another one that is unprepared and you'll get a better answer going
That's a good
forward.
one.
So I
Yeah.
want
Yeah.
to I want to stop you there for a minute because if we have any HR professionals listening right now, they're tearing their hair out because they rightly, in many ways, despite they really have trouble with managers or leaders or anybody saying, I hire for culture, because it's really easy to abuse that and simply say, I didn't hire someone because they weren't a culture fit, meaning they were the wrong sex, the wrong color, the wrong size, whatever it was. They just use this broad sweep brush that nobody can pin. And it's usually used as an excuse for not hiring somebody who I feel like is just like me. We're not talking about that kind of culture. We're talking about very specifically business culture and business mindset. So, for instance, what do you think about work? Do you think work is a necessary evil that you have to do from 8 to 5 in order to go home and actually have a real life? Or is work integrated into your life and it's a real part of who you are? That is a cultural thing. And I don't want to hire anybody who just wants to spend 8 hours at another place and escape. I want someone who integrates it. What do you think about people? Are people stupid and lazy or are they smart and motivated? That is a cultural thing. What do you think about companies? Do you think our company should be in the world to smash all the other companies? or should they be in the world to add value to the world around them? So it's that kind of thing that is actually pretty easily measured as to whether someone is in or out on those kinds of things. And so I just want to lay that to rest, that that's the kind of culture. When we say, I'm not hiring this person for culture, we could say, our vision is to live well by doing good. And this person talks about wanting to smash other companies and hating his competitors. Okay, that's not a culture fit. We're going to move on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
No,
just want, yeah, I just want to lay that out there because a lot of people misunderstand culture as being the other kind of culture that is pretty vague and is pretty well abused. And then resumes being nearly useless, it is about obituaries and way too much emphasis on education. It's just amazing how much emphasis we put on education when there are PhDs waiting tables. It just has very little to do with it. It really is about innate skills. Can I teach somebody to do this or can I not? And,
yeah.
and maybe I can teach someone to be nice, but that's going to take me years and it's a big risk and it's not my business. And so
Yeah.
I want to find someone who already likes people if I'm going to put them in a customer service role. That I'd much rather hire for that kind of stuff to begin with. So those are that's just a great example of those kinds of things that are again counterlogical for people, but they're really pretty intuitive. I want to go to the 5 priorities. And we've already touched on some of those, but the 5 priorities that we have for hiring will kind of jerk people's chains as well. And I call it the reverse hiring priorities because they're reversed from what we normally see. Priority number 1 and 2, we just talked about it, beliefs and culture. Beliefs, and it's not, again, not beliefs that are out there in the world around us, but business beliefs like, do I believe people are stupid and lazy? Well, if I believe people are stupid and lazy, then I'm going to have a very different view of how to treat them than if I believe they're smart and motivated. That's a belief. And that determines our culture. And then from our culture comes the need to look at talents. If people actually have a real fit with us, with our mission and our vision and our values, then we can look at their talent and say, okay, what is their innate talent? Yeah, I need someone who's really understands the law. But what I really need that I can't teach is someone who will really be understanding and compassionate with the people that I have coming to me in our law firm. You can't teach that. And so I want to look at whether someone's compassionate before I ever look at their resume to see if they have the skills. And then the skills, if they pass all 3 of those tests, then yes, we do want to look at skills, but then even there, we want to look at them differently than we traditionally do, which is basically look at their resume and ask them if they're good at something, and they say yes. No, we want to test them at that, depending on what they're looking at. And then finally, maybe at the end of it, we will look at experience and education as a final thing. Well, if you look at the way the normal process goes, the last 2 are the things everybody hires for: skills, experience, and education. That's the first thing the robot looks for on AIs, those things. And they're going to miss so many good people who, like you're a great example. You're coming out of college, you didn't have the skills or the experience, and you had the education, but not the skills and the experience, and so nobody would hire you. But if they'd looked at your innate talents first, and they'd realize, wow, the other stuff will come. I can teach that, but I can't teach these things. So how would you respond to those 5 things? I'll throw them back up on the screen again for
Yeah.
our watchers, but how would you respond?
Yeah. I think maybe kind of what I would say is, are those first 3, right? Beliefs, culture, and talent. At least the beliefs and culture, I was kind of looking at our job posting. Put it another way, our posting is 7 pages long, and it's a full 7 pages. It's not like 6 pages plus
Uh-huh.
line. We're talking about our beliefs, our culture on page 2. So it's right up there.
Probably before you even talk about the skills and experience that you need.
Yeah. I mean, page 1 is an overview of what we're looking for,
Mhm.
and then who are we? So how are we different? Trying to introduce us to these people, right? To see if it grabs onto them or not. Because if they don't grab on, they're not going to read the rest of it, and none of it matters.
And we want them to interview us too. And so that's part of the
Yeah.
interview. Here's who we are.
Yep.
Do you want to be hired by us?
Yep. So who are we? How are we different? Maybe that's kind of the beliefs. This is how we feel like as attorneys we should be interacting with our clients. And then we also talk about our why, our what, what the results we're wanting to get for our clients, the values. That's that's all at the very, very front, right?
Yeah.
And so, because I think it's that important. And so just using that as an example, and then, yeah, going back to the skills and what they've learned and stuff like that. For me, what I've kind of noticed is when I'm looking at resumes, because that's like the ultimate, the cliche of those things, it's almost like, where's the starting point from a training perspective? Right? Or do you have legal experience or do you not? And in some cases, what are you going to have to unlearn?
Yeah.
Right? Or what type of baggage, professional, emotional, mental, cultural, whatever, are you going to be bringing in from your previous experiences? And actually, she would agree with you on this, but the person that I brought on who has the most legal experience as a team member, she would tell you that she has a lot of baggage from the previous law firms that she worked in.
Hmm.
And so, and I knew that there might be some unlearning there because that's the cliche, and she had previous law firm experience. And the hiring process probably brought that out a little bit because it helped her feel open enough to talk about it.
And that's what the research we've done shows is that at least half the time when somebody has a lot of previous experience, it's actually not helpful. It's something they have to unlearn because that experience, even if it's the right thing there, it wasn't the right thing here. And now they have to unlearn it. And there's a rub there because they're saying, well, that's not how we used to do it in the other place. And
Yeah.
yeah. And so we shouldn't assume that experience is a great thing, nor education, nor skills, because again, the skills are self-reported. Let's get them to do that. If we're hiring someone to do a PowerPoint, one of the things we do is we send them a PowerPoint at their convenience. Tell us which hour you want this. You have 1 hour to complete your response and send it back to us. We want to see, can they actually, what do they do with the PowerPoint? Do they make it beautiful? What do we want? What can they do? Let's test them instead of have them tell us that their resume is true.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And,
you touched
and
on that really well. That was one thing is I put a lot more importance to the project work, right?
yeah,
Like you just asked them to just like, hey, prepare this email or proofread this or prepare this deed, or hey, we're trying to schedule a meeting with a client and they are unresponsive. How would you phrase this to try to, get a little bit of fire underneath them in a nice, kind, compassionate way? And so
yeah.
that's much more revealing, as well as the kind of the longer interview with me, but also all of the team members that they would be working with. And I give any of my team members a veto power over somebody,
Hmm.
right? It's not just like, hey, this isn't
Yeah,
just lip service. Hey, meet with this person, and I'm going to make a decision no matter what. If they have a red flag, and I mean, some flags are yellow, some are red, but if it's a really big red flag, they're done.
yeah.
Because I trust my staff because I've hired them for culture, right? And it's this nice virtuous cycle.
Well, and this
Um,
gets into the much bigger picture of what it means to have a participation age company and where people actually, there's distributed decision making where people actually can make decisions and be part of that. That's a difficult thing for people to grasp, but we do the same thing because we don't want arranged marriages, which is what happens in most businesses. A manager will have an interview with someone and they'll hire them and then they'll throw them out into the bullpen with 10 other people and say, here's your new partner. You're going to live with them 8 hours a day. You're going to marry these people and you don't have any choice. It's an
yeah,
arranged marriage. So I'm not going to live with them. They have to agree that this is the right person to be in the bullpen with. It's one of those things that we will not equivocate on. And again, that's counterlogical because managers are supposed to be better at hiring. No, they're not. 8 people in a bullpen would be much better than one manager at figuring out whether the ninth person actually will fit in there well. So great
mhm,
stuff. Well, we just got started. We didn't even talk about the 11 steps themselves, other than write a really long ad. That's like step one. But
yeah,
there's a lot of things in there that we worked at for years, and we have heard the same thing from so many other clients of ours, business owners and HR professionals who say, this is the craziest, weirdest hiring process, and it actually works. And we get really great people from this that we wouldn't have otherwise. Peter Drucker says in the 1990s, he said, everybody hires too fast and fires too slow. And this can take a maximum of a month, but we found it to sometimes take 2 weeks. It's not really that much more input, but it is more. And the reality of it is, if you're going to marry someone, you might as well date them first to make sure this is a good idea. So that's part of the 11-step process. All right, any parting words of wisdom or pain from your perspective on hiring that you could share with our listeners? And then we'll ask you how people can get a hold of you.
Yeah, I hope it's a wisdom. I don't know. I mean, part of me would almost just say learn the 11-step process and implement it because it works pretty darn well. So
that's actually very wise, because I'm a rugged individualist. Before I figured this out for myself, I would take other people's 11-step hiring process or whatever, and then I would immediately change it before I ever tried it. And that's a really good bit of wisdom, is I've learned if somebody is doing something that's worked, do it and then change it later once you feel like you might need to do that. So that's a great bit of wisdom to share with people. If people want to get a hold with you about helping them with estate or just actually sharing stories as business owners, it's a lonely world out there. How can people get a hold of you?
Yep, happy to do both. I really enjoy talking about I don't know what you would call it, the philosophy or practice of being a business owner. It's always a lot of fun. My email address, Brandon, BRANDON @Rains, RAINS, is just like the weather, -law.com is normally the best way to do it.
Brilliant. Brandon, this has been fun. We just scratched the surface, and hopefully we'll get some people to get a hold of you and say, tell me more. Thanks, brother. Appreciate you. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll do another one.
All right. Thanks, Chuck. Take care.
Thank you.
That wraps up another episode of the Get Off the Treadmill podcast. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe and hit the like button to ensure you are receiving the latest tools you need to grow your business and to get off the treadmill. If you want more information on the 3 to 5 Club, the Crankset Group, or to book Chuck as a business advisor, speaker, or workshop leader, you can contact us at grow, GROW, @cranksetgroup.com. Until next time, have a great week.